So don't be deceived by the microphone. It's only so she can record. It's not so we can project. So I was like, oh, how is anyone going to hear me? So it feels a bit fraudulent to be standing in front of you with a microphone that does nothing. But it means that people who aren't here will be able to have an opportunity to learn as well. So first of all, I want to begin by acknowledging the City of Victoria Civic Engagement staff and planning staff who are here. So if all city staff could put up their hands, and a round of applause. Because elected officials can have all the best ideas in the world, but if there are not staff who are as enthusiastic and as able to implement as our staff are, things would go nowhere quickly. So what I'm going to talk about very briefly and then turn it over to Julie and Katie, and then really what I'm most interested in, and you're going to have to use your best loud pub voices, is the question and answer so that we can have a dialogue and learn from each other. So what I want to talk about is our public engagement process on the strategic plan and the budget and what happened and why it was so successful. So first of all, the what happened. And I'm going to go back to 2014. In 2014, and I was a councillor then, we did a public engagement process on the budget, and we had a town hall meeting and 15 people came, and we did a budget survey and 47 people filled it out. All right, so that was our baseline. But then what happened is there was a municipal election, and in that election, voter turnout in Victoria increased by 41%. So we had over 7,000 new voters, or returning voters who hadn't been to the polls in a while. And so I see, and I think council sees, those 7,000 people as an additional audience to keep engaged after the election. So that's what we were building from as we decided to engage and empower our residents and our business owners to help us out with our strategic plan and our budget. So what we did this year is two things. One, we aligned our strategic plan and our budget, and this is, as all of you know, as public engagement practitioners, this meant that people were actually going to give us meaningful input. If it were just our strategic plan, it would have been a bunch of fluff with no resources beside it. And so we asked the public, here's the plan, here's the budget, help us align these things to fit with your values and your desires for the next 4 years. So that was number one. Number two, we really handed it over to the community to get people to the town hall and to fill out the survey. So I'll tell you the successes, and then I'll tell you why I think it was such a success. So remember our baseline that we started with from 2014? Well, in 2015, in 3 weeks, we had over 2,000 people participate in our budget and strategic planning process. Over 2,000 people. Now that's remarkable. We had a survey, and Julie and Katie will tell you more about that. Over 1,500 people filled out the survey. We had a town hall meeting, and it was so packed that our fire department came and warned us that we might be over fire limits. We had 250 people or so packed into City Hall, and another 600 people tuning in and participating from online. We also had another 160 people or so send us emails. So we went from pretty much minimal to pretty much 2,000 people in 3 weeks. And one of the whys is because we aligned the budget and strategic plan, as I said. The other why, and this is, I think, really important about public participation, public engagement, and leadership in the 21st century, Mayor, Council, and staff convened a space. We said on March the 23rd, there will be a town hall meeting at City Hall and online. We put out our save the date notice. We put out our draft strategic objectives, and then the community ran with it. So the food security people put a picture of City Hall with lettuce growing out of it and said, come to your town hall and give input. The home learners, who are a bunch of young environmentalists, organized online and said, we're inviting you to town hall. The micro housing and affordable housing people put up a poster and said, come to your town hall to talk about housing. And this was something that we couldn't have anticipated, and that was really the magic of this process. By the time we got to the evening of March the 23rd, it had literally become the community's town hall. And this was so important in two ways. One, because people came and gave us input. And two, and equally if not more important, it started to reset the relationship between City Hall and the public. Some people, many people, probably most people who came to our town hall had never set foot in City Hall before, except maybe to pay a parking ticket, right? And then all of a sudden, through participating in this event, it was their town hall. And the other unanticipated thing about convening a space, and I'll talk about convening more in a minute, the other unanticipated thing about convening a space is that after somebody got up to the microphone and gave council and the public their input, somebody else posted something on Facebook that person could then go and post something else to on Facebook. And by the end of the evening, people had self-organized into accessibility work groups, and people interested in food security who didn't even know each other had come together. So it was amazing. And really, I think the thing I want to leave you with before I hand it over to Katie and Julie and then take your questions is, if we can do anything as leaders in the 21st century, it's to convene people in unexpected ways. That's it. Well, maybe there are two more things. Convene people in unexpected ways, ask questions and actually listen. And third, and you all know this, take little nuggets of what you hear and implement them right away so people feel like what they said matters not in 5 months or 2 years, but within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And that's part of our follow-up coming out of the budget and strategic planning process. So convene, ask questions and listen, and then act as soon as possible, because otherwise all of that momentum gets lost. And I can tell you, in the city of Victoria, it is not lost. Tomorrow night, we're convening the public again as part of a larger process on sewage. We're doing it at the museum. We've got space for 200 people, and I anticipate that it's going to be overflowing because we're building on the momentum that we've had. I know, overflowing, no pun intended. Okay, very good. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, and over to Katie and Julie.
We were talking about how, can you hear me? Oh, okay. We were talking about how to break this out to sort of make it meaningful for you and sort of give an overview of sort of the vision that's been set out by City Council over the past sort of 4 or 5 months, and then our ability as staff to try and implement and engage the direction of our council. We have the very good fortune in our department to be both responsible for citizen engagement and strategic planning. So professionally, and I think personally, this whole process has been extremely rewarding for us, because not only have we had the ability to influence the engagement process, but also where all of that input goes into the organization and back into the community. So that part is not only interesting and new for us at the city, because never before have we aligned our budget and our strategic plan together, but never had we had the opportunity to really engage the public in setting the priorities for the community through our council. And so it's been such an amazing process to be a part of in such a short amount of time. And I think in terms of where I'd like to focus is on a couple of things, I guess, is one of the things that we've really been taking away from this, aside from all of the tools and techniques that Julie will build upon in terms of what we've introduced here. And I can tell you, anytime we go out to have a conversation with the community or engage on any topic or introduce a new topic with the community for conversation, we always try to introduce a new tool or technique that we've never done before. We embrace the clunky. We have decided that we will go out and we are not going to plan for perfection, or we'll never leave City Hall. And as my husband says, who's a police officer, plan A never survives first attack. So don't spend all your time waiting for that. So but also we've really focused on quality information. So in the past, and I've worked for the city for 10 years, we've done budget engagement in varying forms for 10 years. And last year, although we had 47 people show up, or I think complete a survey, and a handful of people show up at City Hall, I think that was the most we'd had in the 9 years previous to this year. And part of the reason for that was that we didn't have quality information for the public to really dig in on. And we've really made that a focus, is to really create a foundation of understanding so that those in the community can engage on the issues and topics and service levels that are important to them. And I really feel this, and I was having a conversation with Simon Fraser University earlier today about the engagement and public participation profession and where I feel we need to spend some more time. And that really is in ensuring that we can generate and develop compelling content that is human and real and meaningful for the citizens that are allowing us to steward the resources within the community. And so that's been a real focus for us, is trying to make a $200 million budget that everyone in this room that lives in the city of Victoria has contributed to or does as a visitor to Victoria on a daily basis, is how to bring that to life. And we still have some work to do, but again, we knew that we could make it way better than we have before. And that's one of the principles we have sort of embraced at the city, as better as possible in everything we do. And I can tell you on this process, we really did that. We also started out with the staff within the organization. Before we even set out to have a conversation within the community about our services, we wanted to engage our own staff in a new conversation about the work they do, how we do it, where we could do better, where we could save money, where we could deliver greater value. And so we went out and we had conversations first with our own staff to talk about how we could do that, because they're working on the front line every day. They're taking calls from customers, they're hearing from concerned citizens, and so we engaged about 350 people across the organization in those conversations. And then we started to develop a new giant document that would start to articulate the city service levels better. And then from that, we were in a position to have more meaningful conversations. The other real takeaway from this process, and I'm looking at Lauren because I didn't know Lauren Daniels from the placemaking group until this recent experience. And now I see Lauren like almost daily in all different environments. And that's what's been really great about it. There's been such a huge shift in the conversation within City Hall and within our community about what the city does, how we do it, how we could do it differently, how the community can do it for us and build capacity, and we can step back and be the sort of facilitators of that, but without having to have so much involvement in the process itself. And that's creating conversations that have never been had in City Hall before and have never been had on the streets of Victoria before. And that is just creating this entirely new energy within the organization that will innovate and create more ideas and actually will create results much faster than if we had followed a traditional process. So I'm going to let Julie kind of jump in on the tools, but I think what's really interesting about this piece is that we haven't been talking like this as an organization in the past. And it's really new for a lot of us at the city. I always say that we're 153 years old at the city. We're not the fastest moving ship when it comes to change. And although our history and our heritage is one of our greatest assets, it's one of our biggest challenges as well. And so in the sort of 4 or 5 months since we've been having these conversations, we have changed, I think, decades in terms of how we do business. And it's just a really exciting time, I think, for us, really exciting time for the community. And there are so many lessons learned that have come from just this short time frame that can be applied in, I think, almost any setting. So I'll let Julie explain some of the kind of neat things I think we were able to do in this process, and then welcome any questions.
Well, thanks very much, Katie and Mayor Helps. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the tools and techniques we used. As a P2 practitioner, I'm like you guys and always wanting to know, how'd you do it? Why'd you choose what you chose? And what was the thinking behind everything? So I just want to give you guys a little bit of an overview of why we did what we did, and then we'll open it up for questions. But where we really started from, we understand that the budget and the strategic plan, it's super complex. We get that. And so we really wanted to take that complex information and present it in a form that's accessible and digestible to everybody. So what we did is we did a few videos. We had the mayor do a great video that was really personal, and it just talked about the engagement process, why it's important, and really showcase some of the tools and ways to get involved. So that was our first video. And then we did another video which tried to break down the budget. What is a municipal budget? Why is it important? How does it affect your daily lives? So we even compared it to how you run your household. So really trying to bring it down for people and trying to get this complex subject and bring it into a way that's really accessible for everybody. We did the same thing with some of our online and print materials. We took what was over 1,000 pages of our draft budget, which is our capital and operating budget, and put it just into a few pages. So it's kind of like Budget 101. We called it Budget at a Glance, but it took all the highlights from our budget. It took a summary of what each department does and what they're planning to do in the coming years. So that was really effective. And we also, to mimic our video about what is a municipal budget, we had this handout just to explain what is a budget and how does it affect you. So we had those two pieces, which were really helpful to create the foundation for engagement. And we really wanted these tools to not only create a foundation for this year, but as we move forward, so everybody gets where we're starting from, and then we can progress into 2016 as we move forward in our budgeting process. And we wanted all this information to provide people with the tools they need to provide informed feedback into our financial planning process. So how we collected the feedback from the public, we decided to just focus on a few tools instead of inundating individuals with all these ways to get involved. We said, okay, we'll just pick a few key tools. And as a P2 practitioner, you're always reading about moving away from traditional forms of engagement, run away from the open house. People don't want to do that. Given today's day and age, all social media, as well as people are busy. But yet, as Mayor Helps mentioned, the town hall really worked wonders for us. We had over 250 people attend. Too bad we don't have a PowerPoint, because I'd love to share some photos. The council chambers and antechamber were overflowing with people. I was one of the last people to be seated, and I couldn't even find wall space just to lean up against the wall. I had to sit down on the floor in between other people, and you couldn't even see the speakers. It was that packed. And it was really great to see young folks too, students for the first time at a traditional town hall. We always think they won't show, but they did, and it was great. We started the town hall with a bit of an open house. I'm sorry, I might have said open house before, but I meant town hall. We did a little open house at the beginning, so we opened our doors at 6:30. People were invited to view display boards, and they were to showcase some of the highlights from the financial planning process. And they were invited to talk directly to staff before they had the ability to address council. So any questions they had the opportunity to do that. There was a lineup at the door at 6:30. It was a great opportunity for people to get in and really talk and kind of warm up to what was coming. We also, it was also one of the highest webcast events. So right after the election, this was the second highest most viewed webcast events, and after anything else, this is about doubles any normal viewership we get for any of our council or committee meetings. So that was a huge success. So we got about over 600 people viewing us online. We also did our first ever e-town hall, so we really integrated the social media aspect into things. People were able to tweet in or post on Facebook some of the questions and comments they had for council. They could also phone in, and there was a web submission form, so that was new. And we had about 100 inquiries that were directed to council and staff as part of the budget process. So we see that as a huge success. I don't want to overly reference these notes, but it was just so amazing that I don't want to miss anything. For those people who couldn't attend, we also provided an online component, which we traditionally do. So we offered a survey, but again, it's a massive document to read through, a lot of feedback to provide. So we provided a short survey and a long survey. So we really wanted to capture people's feedback on the draft strategic plan. and what to do with the $4.5 million of unallocated funding. So we just asked those 2 questions, and then for people who were more interested, they could fill in the rest of the survey, which would get feedback on the draft budget. And so we had about over 1,500 submissions, so it was really well, and it was really well received, and people really appreciated the opportunity just to provide just to do a short-term survey or a short survey and the long one as well. So that really worked out for us as well. And as the mayor mentioned, in comparison to previous years, this was a huge success. Like we didn't even convert it into percentages because it would be that ridiculous. Like it's in the thousands how much everything went up. So we're really pleased with everything we've tried there. And we, as Katie mentioned, we always try and do something different, a little new. So that was a lot with this e-town hall component this time around. But yeah, I think that as the mayor mentioned as well, it was really the community really picked it up. So we attribute that for a lot of the turnout and the great success. And I'll just turn it back to Katie to talk a little bit more about success and some of the lessons learned along the way.
I think I touched on a few of these, but there were a couple of the sort of unexpected successes, I think, or experiences that we realized through this. I think one of the things being that this engagement has led to greater engagement internally. We had staff across the organization involved in this process. It's changed the way we think about citizen engagement as an organization, which means we can do it differently and better every time we do it in the future. I remember when we were leaving at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning after the town hall, and I'm pretty sure our IT staff did not want to go home because they had never been a part of something that the city had done in such a meaningful way, where we were so reliant on the technology working for the e-town hall that we pulled out all the stops that night. And they loved it, and they want more of that. And that's part of the horsepower behind how do you engage your own organization, regardless of big, small, private, public, whatever it is. How do you engage everyone in that same experience? Because if everybody's thinking along the same lines, we'll just see far greater results as we go. We learned that engagement, we know this, but what we often hear from those who are reluctant to want to go too far with this is that it's not expensive. Aside from the staff time, our engagement process cost $2,500. So if you do the math on that, for the number of people that we were able to engage and involve in this process, I think the value was extremely high. And it means that on all of the other things going forward, we can build on that momentum. We have such fantastic tools now that it's not like it used to be. You don't have to spend a ton of money on print advertising. You can use technology to reach people. We don't need a ton of time. We can spread the word quickly if we're talking to the right people, and they can span their networks and they can mobilize the community themselves. It doesn't have to be reliant on the agency that's sort of convening the conversation or the space. I think I said in embrace clunky, don't strive for perfection. It's a really important principle, and it's a really empowering principle for anybody engaging on any topic. The issues facing communities, and probably any issue that you're working on in your own organization, they're not simple. They're not easy. They're sensitive. They're controversial. They generate polar opinions, and that's a good thing. And there's nothing you can do to plan your way out of that. You actually want that. And so by kind of putting the bookends out a little bit further in terms of what to expect from that, our whole philosophy is that let's develop a process or a strategy that will help a conversation occur, and then just let it happen. And for us in a public sector organization, what comes from that, as long as we can sit back and believe in the process and how it was applied, all of the input and information that comes back into informed decision making, that's over to the elected officials to take that information and do as they need to in terms of guiding those decisions. And I guess the other piece that we took away from this is that, I just to echo Mayor Helps' comments, is building momentum. There is sometimes community fatigue in terms of all of the consultation that's happening, and then we sit and we see nothing, or it feels like we don't see anything, and then we hear of another conversation about the exact same topic again in another iteration. And it's frustrating and it's disengaging to the community. And I really do think that you have to build some momentum. You could call them quick wins, but I think it's more, there are easy things every day that start to change the temperature just a little bit towards the end result you're looking for. And it doesn't require months and months of planning, or sometimes it's just the way we talk about it within our own groups, how the community starts to engage on different things. But I think it can look and feel a lot different very quickly without a lot of work. So I think we would welcome any questions, whether it's on this topic or anything else that we are doing or is happening in the community that you think we might be able to speak to. Thank you.
Great. Okay, do you want to go first? No, okay. So no, you're absolutely right, and one of the things that's really come out of this engagement process, well, there are many you've heard about, but is a new relationship between council and staff, and so it's this cyclical loop. They get energy, we get energy, and then add in the public. So there's new energy at the organization. There's new energy in the public. There's no doubt about it. The easy, simple way to build trust, and we actually embedded this. I didn't talk about our strategic plan, but we before we drafted our plan, we came up with principles. And we came up with principles about how we were going to work together as a council to create the plan, principles that we would have in the plan, and principles in terms of how we would implement the plan. And one of the first principles for implementation is doing what we say. And that's written there. The plan will be, it'll be in beautiful form. We're going to hire a graphic illustrator. So that is in my experience, my vast experience of community organizing, that is the way to build trust and respect and genuine engagement, is doing what we say. And as you said in your question, saying why we can't when we can't. And in terms of, I feel like I'm fighting a huge battle, and I don't know if it's just in Victoria or if it's just a sense about local government, but a sense that nothing ever really changes. Nothing ever really can be different. And when I was up at the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, which is a gathering of all the elected officials on the island and coastal communities, we started a network a few years ago called the Young Elected Officials Network, the 40 and under crowd of elected officials. And the gathering that we had in Parksville was the first Courtney was the first gathering since the election. Our numbers had doubled, the under 40 crowd. And as we all went around and introduced ourselves, there was a collective sense of impatience at how slow government works. But now we are government. So I think that that's part of trust building and keeping people engaged, is getting rid of that myth that actually government can move as quickly, particularly local government, as quickly as we get input, as quickly as our staff feed it back in their best professional advice. Then we've got to act. And I'm actually going to change the bottom. Right now, the bottom of my email signature is from Jane Jacobs, and it's about cities needs to be built by everyone. So anyways, you can see it if I've sent you an email. I'm changing it to Katie Hamilton saying embrace the clunky, because I think that's how we build trust. We don't have to be perfect. We have to try and be willing to fail. So thanks for your question.
I still like the Jane Jacobs. In terms of evaluation, we always establish an internal metric within our team to try and often we'll do it with the council themselves. Over the past few years, we've really tried to change the conversation at the council table with staff in terms of how to plan engagement. It used to be that staff from any department might bring forward a proposal or a problem, and they'd bring it to council, and then council would say, great, go consult the public, and they would leave the table and come back a couple of months later with what they did and what they heard. But there wasn't really a discussion around, well, what information or input does council need to inform the decision, and who do you need it from, and have you thought about what you will do with that information when you get it? And so we've really tried to focus in on what are we trying to achieve here, what are the different options available to the council, how many people do you feel we need to reach to feel that you've heard from those you need to? Are there specific individuals or agencies you need to hear from? So we try to have those conversations as much as we can. We've made it a requirement that any project proposal coming to the council must include an engagement approach within it to have that conversation. So in terms of the specific evaluation around this one, I mean, I think Julie rolled off a number of metrics, and it was exponential in terms of previous. But I think we had it cautiously, and I don't even want to say it because it sounded so low, but I think there were some who said, okay, maybe 200 or 300. And I said, well, I want 1,000. And then it hit 1,500, and then it kept kind of growing and growing. And I think we were about a week or two into it, and we realized this was way bigger than anything we could have hoped for. And we kind of stopped measuring anything at that point because it was so off the charts. But I always think it's the anecdotal pieces. I often refer to myself as the common denominator, not the lowest, but the common. I have 3 kids. I'm driving to 3 different schools in the morning. I care about my community immensely. Probably I'm more engaged in sort of the civic issues facing all of us, but I don't have time to engage on all of them outside of my work. So if I'm not hearing about something, I'll often be the first one to say to an elected official, I'm not really hearing about this, and I'm the type of person this would impact. I think we need to go a little bit further. And on this one, I was hearing about it from everyone. And I'm the common denominator. I have friends that I would consider the very extreme hard to reach, and they were hearing about it. So those types of anecdotes, I think really, we knew that it was kind of hitting all corners of the community in terms of awareness. The other piece is that I think we really try to create the choice for the community. I want to know that we've done everything we can to give them the opportunity to engage, and then anyone can decide whether they want to. And that's why we're really trying to focus on more passive opportunities and not just those types of opportunities where somebody has to make a decision to get involved in a civic matter or an issue. We try to really go to where the people are so that they don't have to make that. We're taking the work out of it a little bit. So I don't know if that was the specific sort of metrics of evaluation you were looking for, but.
I think that one of the things that's often missing from good P2 projects is evaluation. And it's important to take the time afterwards to go back and say, this worked, this didn't. I love the fact learn from the clunky or go out with the clunky, because you actually, even in your evaluation process, you learn a lot from those clunky. So I just wanted to do that. The other thing, I'm going to make a pitch, and I'm totally surprised. You guys should put your names forward for Organization of the Year for the Core Value Awards for IAP2. Calgary won it last year, but I think just listening to what you've done,
I think we're working on that already. Yeah, but that's very helpful to hear that. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Have you developed some internal tools for engineers so they understand the principles?
Yes, we are doing that. Actually, I was on a conference call today with Simon Fraser University, and they were talking about their certificate of dialogue and public participation that they have, and whether municipalities were aware of it, and how could it be more meaningful. And one of the things myself and a representative from the City of Vancouver articulated is that making it meaningful to technical, scientific, or engineering staff is where you need to focus. It needs to be part of the project management philosophy of any organization, and it can't be done by any one group or staff person in an organization. It needs to be embraced as part of that project planning, not the piece where they go, here you go, you have this much time to do your engagement, and then we're going to carry on with the project. One of the strategies is, and I work with engineers all the time, I would say anything I'm about to say in front of them. One of the things we're doing, because what we really heard within this conversation was that placemaking is a really important aspect and I guess approach and study that we at it's new to many areas within the organization, and engineering would probably be one of them. We've asked Lauren to come in to the organization and pull all of our technical planners together in a room to build relationships and build a shared level of understanding around what is placemaking and what does it mean when you're planning a project, because we need to start there. It's that basic. But on the technical side of things, I think I don't know what the approach is, but I think often engineers or in those fields may learn the hard way, and it's only then when they realize really the true benefit of planning it in. But one of the things that we drive home internally is that when we do engagement well, we see results, our projects are delivered, and they're usually delivered faster than in those situations where we failed to plan appropriately. And so I think we're really starting to see that.
Fire hall, yeah.
Fire hall. And you've been talking a lot about market studies, and I'm not sure that I completely understand the reason and the benefit. And I guess as a small business, like two prongs to the question. When you say things like, before we design our fire hall, we want to go to the public and consult with the public about what they want to see for the fire hall. And we're asking for people to come in with their ideas, like architects and planners and all the rest of it. And as a small business person, I'm going, okay, well, wait a second. It takes a lot of time and an effort to plan and provide ideas and, submit that kind of thing. We used to in a formal sense. So why and how, I guess, how do they work, and why would architects, planners, engineers participate in something like that if there's no resulting outcome at the end of the day for them in terms of business or work?
Yeah, so great question. So you bet you. Yes, I will. I was just about to repeat the question. Sarah, you're pushy. It's good. That's how we get things done. So the question was, the City of Victoria is undertaking what's called a market sounding to get ideas about our fire hall. And I guess the question is it fair to ask for ideas from architects and developers and others if it doesn't necessarily result in business for them? So I'll start, and then Katie can take over if she has more to add. A market sounding is obviously, as many of you know, very different from a request for expressions of interest, a request for proposals. It's a very simple check out there in the world to see what are the possible ideas. And we've had everything from a simple letter from some nonprofits to, well, I haven't actually seen the proposals yet, I've only heard about them, to more extensive ideas from architects or people who have land for sale. So the beauty of a market sounding, it's true, you do have to, I guess the person who's putting in the input can decide on the level of input they want to put in. I can tell you that doing a market sounding before any other more in-depth engagement, we're going to get a report very soon. The city manager has given me a little bit of a sneak preview, but it's basically, it's going out there to the world saying, here is a fire hall that needs to be rebuilt. Here's another piece of land beside it. Here are all the other publicly owned lands in the city. What are your ideas? And it's different than public engagement, a market sounding is, because, and I had to be very clear with this, members of the public, they're like, I have an idea for the fire hall. It's like, awesome, that will come. That will come once we can find the people who have, quite frankly, the wherewithal to put together projects, you know, the capital investment to partner with the city to build something. So that's, so market sound, literally, you know, if you wanted to put something in, a one-page letter of interest gets put into the pot in the same way as a larger project or a larger application would. But what council did is we said we want innovation, we want outside the box, we want creativity. We don't even necessarily care where the fire hall goes. Surprise us with locations you might have for sale, and we'll swap you some city-owned land for where the fire hall currently is. So I'm expecting we're going to get some great things back. But it's true, it does need to balance the ability. We don't want to ask people for work without them getting some return. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify.
Okay. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think just the quick piece is that not only can you as a proponent determine your level of input into the process, but the city can also vary the level of what they're asking for, and sometimes it's just a letter of intention. They're new to us. This is we've just done two, and the second one we've done is almost extremely opposite of the way we did the first one. So it's sort of lessons learned as we go. So I think that's part of it. But the other piece is that what we often find when we go sort of further down a traditional process is that we'll make some decisions based on the best information we have, and then the community tells us, hey, how come you never thought of this? If only you'd kind of put it out there a little bit earlier before you invested all of this time and work, we may have been able to kind of flag for you that there was an opportunity. And so the other piece is that some municipalities and government agencies that do market soundings will do an honorarium on those where they are asking you to really invest some time and effort in acknowledgement of that.
That is a great question. Yes, the question was, and I feel very passionately about this. I'm going to yell over these guys over here. The question was, what's the difference between ongoing engagement versus, and I guess initiative-based engagement versus, or in addition to potentially ongoing advisory committees like an advisory planning commission or so on. It won't be any surprise that I am a big fan of time-limited, focused, task-based, action-oriented task forces. What we've, again, as part of our, and this is the brilliance of council, as part of our strategic plan, again, going back to those principles, one of the principles of implementation is to align council's governance structure with the objectives of the plan. And so I'll give you an example. One of the things that we heard at the public, the town hall, was it's all fine and good to be talking about bike lanes, but there are all sorts of other accessibility issues that people have concerns about, particularly people in wheelchairs or people who are visually impaired. And so one of the suggestions that came from public input was to set aside some money for an accessibility reserve fund to make accessibility improvements over time. And so in that sense, the implementation will be an ongoing, so this is where so we've set aside money for ongoing improvements, so an ongoing accessibility working group makes sense, right? There's money, there's a long-term plan, we need a long-term group. Economic development and prosperity, affordable housing, those are two key priorities that came out of the public input. Those are time-limited 2-month task forces that make concrete recommendations to council for implementation. Those then dissolve, and then we form new task forces. So the answer is that both are necessary, but not in an ad hoc way. It needs to be aligned with the objectives of the organization. So thanks for asking that question. It felt like a gift. other questions? All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for having us here.